Hi, welcome to the Stitch TV show. I'm Lynn.
And I'm Pam. We're happy you're joining us today. The Stitch is an online quilt talk show, the perfect soundtrack for your sewing room or the sewing room. We're not going to judge where you watch.
Just how you sew.
Yeah, just join us. Anyway, twice monthly talk shows, virtual stitch-ins, celebrity interviews, book clubs, and podcasts. You can learn more at thestitchtvshow.com.
Our show today is brought to you by QT Fabrics, and we have the ombre stitch pop-ups by Gypsy, the Fat Quarter Gypsy.
Yes, not suitable for trampoline, as we learned on the last episode.
It was kind of sad. We were disappointed.
That might have been user error, frankly.
Could be, because it does pop up well.
Oh, we should have switched these, because then I would have the purple one close to me with my purple shirt.
Well, no.
No, we don't want to give production an eye twitch.
It'll cause problems.
It'll cause problems.
So, today we're going to be talking about specialty stitches on your sewing machine and fussy cutting. And we're joined by our quilt for our newest pattern, Crazy Modern. You can buy your own copy at shop.thestitchtvshow.com.
So, Lynn.
Yes.
What's up?
We have an announcement that we will be at the Houston Quilt Market. We just got accepted into that.
We did.
So we're going to be at the Houston Quilt Market selling our wares, our patterns, and
other wares. So, yeah, we sent in the paperwork for the booth. And now we just kind of have to figure out how much stuff we can fit in that space. It's going to involve a tape outline in my basement. And a lot of arrangement.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. Yeah. We don't know what we're doing. So we will show you how to do it the Stitch way. Maybe we'll film part of this is how the Stitch managed to market.
I'm going to have to move several of the lawnmowers and the go-kart in order to make room in my garage to tape it all off, but it'll be fine.
Okay, we'll have to figure out how.
We could just have a lawnmower go-kart race as part of it.
Dun-da-da, that would be fun.
Y'all, we live in the country.
We do, that's true.
Lawnmower races
There's
frequently.
A lake right over there, right across the street, there's a lake.
So we are still figuring out festival attendance. I don't think I can go to it, but Lynn might be able to. But we don't know quite what all that will entail. So stay tuned for more details.
And if I am going to be at festival, I'll let you know where.
And when.
And
how.
Yes, because I think if I do stay, I would be doing some presentations, hopefully at a booth. So
hopefully.
There we go. Hopefully. We'll see.
Alrighty, so both our topics today apply to the quilt behind us. One might think we planned that. One would be correct. Amazing.
Amazing how the spreadsheet works out.
So Lynn really loves pushing buttons.
I do.
On her sewing machine.
I do. I like pushing
My husband tells me I am also good at pushing buttons.
Those are different kind. That's a completely
kind of
different.
We're talking about Lynn's kind of buttons right now.
I do. I think that we spend a lot of money on these very nice, expensive sewing machines, and they do all these specialty stitches. And as quilters, most of the time, we're only using the straight stitch and maybe the blanket stitch if you're doing applique. Throw in a zigzag there. That's only 3 buttons. So, and there's lots of other buttons. So I decided to make a quilt where you push all the buttons kind of thing. So this is specialty stitches. And really, it's kind of fun to see how they work out. But, the production is going to kill me because I didn't show them this before. But, so here is one of my sewing machines and all of the different specialty stitches that you can do on it.
And we'll post a picture of this in the show notes so you guys can see.
So you guys can see it. But there's really solid kind of dense stitches, which are great if you're going to use a variegated thread because it really shows the color changes, and I think that's really kind of cool. And then there's some great, kind of fancy stitches with loops and little flowers and some architectural kind of things like Greek key or those kinds of things. And they can really add interest to a lot of things.
Would those things be quilts, Lynn?
They could be quilts.
Amazing.
They could be wall hangings. Like, this is the class that I took from Jane Sassman. And what was cool about it is we used all we did was put leaves on a piece of black fabric. And then what make the leaves stand out are the specialty stitches around each of the leaves. And it was just a way to try all of the different specialty stitches that your sewing machine could do. Now, if you have a featherweight, we're sorry.
Your specialty is straight stitch.
This is not your episode. But what I wanted to say, just to consider when you're using specialty stitches, is if you're using a lot, you want to stabilize. And this is just a lightweight fusible stabilizer.
Yeah, this is
medium weight.
Right, but it's not a woven. This is a non-woven, which means it's just fibers kind of mashed together.
Yep.
Now you can use a woven too. There's like the one we just looked up on the stitch-in last night that I totally have forgotten.
That
already.
one?
That one.
Yes, it is. Which I can't tell you the name.
But you
it's
wouldn't
a
want to
Pellon
go.
product.
You wouldn't want to go heavier than a medium weight for something going in a quilt.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And this is for wall hanging. I mean, this is.
Yeah.
But you can see how the stabilizer allows the stitches to lay flat. The thing when you're considering some of these stitches is they want to gather the fabric. So if you stabilize it keeps it flat.
Yes.
Kind of thing. And then the other thing that you can do with specialty stitches is mirror them. A lot of our machines have this mirror button where it will flip the orientation from left to, or right to left to right. So you can mirror. And I use that in applique sometimes too, just with the blanket stitch.
Now on my machine, because I have a Janome, not only do I have specialty stitches, and it's this cool thing that like kind of flips up from behind, and then the sign itself rotates like it's the countdown calculator on Lost, like flip, 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 flip. It's very exciting. And I can also program stitches, so I could program mine to say like, okay, do the leaf stitch, and then do the funny curve, and then do a spade, and then just repeat that. So I can program 3 specialty stitches in a row.
Right.
Which is, honestly, you got to revisit the book to remember how to do that.
Right. The Berninas do that also, and that was you can combine stitches, and if you really like them, the Bernina has a place where you can save them. So, and I'm sure
I have memory slots as well.
Memory slots of what your favorite stitches are. So if you want to repeat that. And I know we showed this on the last episode, but this, again, it's not just for quilts. And by the way, the Crazy Modern Quilt is essentially a pattern that it's my personal nod to 100 years ago, between 1890 and 1910, the crazy quilts that we see today, that's when they were made. So if someone has one in your family, 9 times out of 10, they were made within that 20-year period, because that's really when it was popular in the United States. And it was a way for the ladies of the home to show off their hand embroidery skills and to show off their fabrics, because some of the fabrics that they used in these were very expensive. So it was a status. They weren't used. That's why a lot of them are still in pretty good shape. The problem with some of them is the mordants that they use to dye the fabrics with, and the types of fabrics like silks are very fugitive. So they have fallen apart through the year for 100 years. But what I did with this pattern, it's my nod of going, how can we make a crazy quilt today in kind of a more modern take on it? And what I did is I used the specialty stitches on our machines, which I think is a fun way to do it. But don't just think you can use specialty stitches on something, that big, because that took a long time. I was working on it. Pam's like, you ever going to get that pattern done? No, never. It's done. Yay. I was so celebrating when it was done, because every little square was a piece of artwork in a lot of ways. And that's true, and that's why I kind of did it. It's the nod to 100 years ago. I mean, they would paint. I didn't paint on this. They would paint. They would do hand embroidery. They would use it as a memory quilt of, you know, a lot of times you'll see political printed material of who was running in that election or the local area of where they're from. Cigar ribbons will be quilted into them. It's just a lot of different stuff like that. So, but you can use specialty stitches on a bag too, and it'll just give you more detail and interest to your bag. So this is just like 3 or 4 different specialty stitches that I stitched along the lines, which made it, I don't know, it makes it fun. It's fun. It takes a lot longer.
It does. You have to be patient when you're using specialty stitches because frequently your machine is not just moving forward, progressing fabric, it's forward and back and side to side. And it just, you don't try and power through it because you can cause tension issues and all that. So it's like you push the pedal, you kind of keep your hands there, but you're not tugging on the fabric because the machine has to be able to move the fabric.
Because a lot of times it's moving like this.
And that's why, particularly for this quilt, you're doing the specialty stitches block by block and not on the entire top because that can, you can get some weird
because it'll pull
skewing.
Yeah. And that's why we did it block by block too. And this is a little bit different than historically. The crazy quilts that you see historically, they would cover the seams with their hand embroidery. A lot of times on this one, I did cover some seams, but a lot of times on this one, I did the specialty stitches next to the seam so that you could see the stitch. You know, it was me showing off the stitch. And it does take less time than hand. There you go.
There's that.
There's that.
I mean, you can have a sip of tea while your foot's on the pedal, so it's cool.
Exactly. You can be like, all right.
Well, and you also used at least 3 different threads on each block?
Yes.
Your rule of 3?
I do. I kind of have a rule of 3 when I'm doing a block of this type in that 3 different threads, at least 3 different stitch patterns. So, you know, and I would do them in groups. Like I did all the navies in the same group. So that would help get it done faster. So that I keep the same thread and do 6 different navy blocks with that same stitch. So I'm not changing the stitch and the thread every time.
Yeah.
There was a way to get through it.
Now, have you made like a stitch book?
I haven't. I haven't. And that's, I think, a great idea. And what a lot of people do is they'll take all their stitches and they will stitch out just a section of them to see what they look like.
With varying widths, varying lengths, mirroring. And if you do it on a muslin sample, of course, it's backed with interfacing, then you can just take a Sharpie or whatever and write, like, here's the setting to get this look.
Yes,
and here's the weight thread that I use, because even...
weight threads change.
Now, I will say I have found that trying to use heavier threads and specialty stitches sometimes doesn't work. Like, it's just too much thread going through too close a hole in the fabric, and it just kind of... honestly breaks a hole in the fabric. That's not a great look.
I would say 9 times out of 10 for this quilt, I used either a 30 weight sulky thread or a Isacord rayon thread. And the reason I chose those threads, I used some superior threads that were variegated. But the reason I chose those threads was because A, I had them, and B, color.
Yeah.
Like I was looking at specific color because I was matching the color to the block. Because I wanted it to be there, but I didn't want it to be like, you know, which sometimes I do.
Yeah. And
they're more subtle.
And there's a difference in sheen too. So if you go with a super skinny thread, you won't necessarily even see the stitch pattern unless it's a very dense one.
The 30 weight sulky threads, I think I was most pleased with.
Yeah.
It was just seemed to be about the right weight. And I used an 80 needle. So, because that's what was in my machine. But that's a good universal kind of.
Yeah.
That 30 weight with an 80 is not bad.
Yeah, that's what I usually piece with.
Yep.
Not a 30 weight, but a 50 weight thread for piecing with an 80 weight needle.
Right.
Anyway. And you didn't run into any problems with... Because you didn't use interfacing on the back here. You were foundation piecing.
I did foundation piece, which definitely is a stabilizer.
Yes.
So I didn't have to use additional stabilizer. Now, I will say, if you choose to thread paint, which is much more dense thread work, which I think I do thread work. If I wanted to put that in this, I would have to stabilize the muslin before muslin. Sorry, I don't know why I do that wrong.
I'm not judging. I just want people to not leave angry comments.
I know. I don't. It's my pronunciation. It's nothing. I'm talking about the muslin fabric. You have to stabilize it before you do heavy thread work because you don't want it to pucker. Now, I will say this quilt kind of has that flow to it, but that's what crazy quilts look like.
Yeah.
Like historically. So again, it's my nod to 100 years ago. And I just thought it'd be fun to update it and have a crazy quilt today. And what I think is kind of cool is we've seen crazy quilts on the runway of some very popular American designers in the last season in New York. So like they were doing big skirts with crazy quilt blocks on them. I was like, hey, I'm kind of cool. Like, I think it was Calvin Klein.
New York City.
New York City.
No.
No. Yeah. Anyway. But I think you're going to see this kind of look become more and more popular. I love it. That's one of my favorite. I was so happy when this quilt was done. Not just because I got it done, but I really think it's a fun quilt. And I just like the way it looks.
Awesome. Well, we are going to let you guys take a closer look at it right now.
Yes.
And we'll be right back.
We're back, and now we're going to talk about...
Cut that part right on out.
No, we're not. So we're back, and now we're going to talk about fussy cutting or selective cutting. So what do you know about fussy cutting, Pam?
I know that I have a set of templates that are helpful that we talked about when we did specialty rulers 2 episodes ago. That can help with that.
What kind of fabrics do you fussy cut?
But typically novelty or something with a print
on it. You
mean
like with the Grinch?
No. Because you need all the Grinches.
Wonder Woman?
No. Because what if you... okay, so
Ink and Arrow telephones?
Yes. We have had maybe some potential fussy cutting debacles where maybe only crotches were highlighted of certain characters.
That's true.
So you have to fussy cut responsibly.
Use your scissors.
Intentional.
Responsibly.
Intentional.
Bears?
The bears.
The bears. Reindeers?
No.
Snowmen's?
Yes. She has no idea why I'm making these rules. I don't either. I'm just having fun.
That's the normal thing.
You know, and I don't normally do a lot of that. I just sort of let happenstance happen because then you sometimes do get the occasional just occasional, which is a different problem that we're having. But you get the...
It's not just me.
No, it's cool. Coffee was a while ago. Yeah, you get the occasional like accidental fussy cut. Like a guy peeking in from the side of the block. Random foot.
But don't you like, if you don't fussy cut, like if you don't fussy cut, you'll like cut Wonder Woman's head off. It'll be like,
yeah, just want to highlight her awesome outfit, man.
Chop off her head. Kind of thing.
But Steve Rogers ain't coming after me. Spoiler alert.
So you have a set of...
Sorry, it's not even Steve Rogers. That's Captain America.
So if you don't have...
It is all incorrect.
We're off the rails on this one.
So how does one achieve...
I was going to ask that question.
The cutting of fussiness.
How do you be selective in your fussiness of cutting?
Typically, you need great templates of fussiness.
What if you don't have the fussy selective templates? What would you do?
Well, as with most things, I usually start by sulking and crying a little bit. It's not terribly effective, but sometimes I feel better.
It's sad that I'm laughing at you about crying.
No, because you know my trick. That
know.
I taught
She
myself how to
waits till
cry
she
the
cries.
single tear.
She cries, and then she calls me, Lynn, fix it.
No, not about that. No, but I taught myself to cry with a single tear. So you don't get all red and puffy, but you get the emotional impact of having maybe your significant other see that you are in fact crying, but you're not doing the ugly cry.
Okay, so here's my suggestion.
This is a lot better suggestion. It's a lot more productive and helpful.
Here's my suggestion. If you want to fussy cut something specific and you know what shape you need it to be in, get a piece of acetate and cut it to the shape that you need. Okay? Then you
don't use your fabric scissors to cut the acetate.
That's a good tip right there. Very good tip. Use the cheap paper scissors. Then once you determine the shape, cut it out. And then you will take that to your fabric and lay it on how you want it and then trace around that so that you can then cut it out specifically to that shape.
Now, when you trace, what kind of marking utensil are you using?
Well, you're cutting it. So you can use a pencil. You can use
whatever shows up.
Whatever shows up, chalk. I have actually used gel roller pens. Because sometimes dark fabrics, if you get the white gel roller pens, if I know I'm cutting it out, like I'm cutting on the line, then it doesn't matter what pencil or whatever kind of thing you use.
True.
So, and then you can be very specific. And there are people out there that their whole, quilting business is based on fussy selective cutting. And now, I took a class from a lady who did this.
When you are doing the marking, like on the acetate, does that include seam allowance? Do you just add that magically later?
I would cut the acetate, including the seam allowance.
But maybe draw a second line.
And draw the second line of where it's actually going to sew. So I would see exactly what is going to show up. That's how I would do it.
Now, another question.
Yes.
Do you need to get caught up in having it be on grain? No, you don't.
I was going to say no.
No, you don't. Because sometimes you want a jaunty angle or you want something to be perfectly straight. And if the fabric's not printed that way, if you're worried about it being biased, because some people do get nervous about sewing that, use a little bit of best press or a little bit of spray starch, and that'll just help stabilize that any potential bias edge so it won't stretch weird when you're actually cutting it.
Right, yeah. And what is really cool about selective cutting or fussy cutting is you can get some really neat repeats.
Kaleidoscope effect.
Yes, which I took this class from Paula Nadelstern. And we use this kind of acetate technique. And honestly, you match up the line. It's hard to see, and we'll take a picture of this, but you match up the lines in these individual pieces of fabric. Now, you have to choose a fabric that has a repeat that is mirrored when you're doing a kaleidoscope, because one piece will have to be mirrored on certain depending upon the kaleidoscope.
No, I have done a kaleidoscope block that didn't have to be mirrored.
Some of them do.
A lot of florals are good for that.
Yeah. Yep.
Because I did one for my daughter that had I thought about it, maybe I would have brought and we could have hung behind us.
That could have, yeah.
This is a good quilt to do that.
Right. So this is Paula Nadelstern, I mean, her whole thing is selective cutting and where you place your template. I mean, we spent 8 hours making this block.
Girl, that is a lot of time for one block.
It was. Guess how many blocks I have? Guess how many blocks I have of this? One. And
so in kaleidoscopes, it looks like these are kind of, except for the joining seam.
Yep.
They're all kind of pressed to the side, which, again, personal preference, whether you press open or closed.
It made it flat.
Yes.
So there you go. There you go. But I think Paula, she's got some books out there she definitely walks through for this kind of very specific type of matching. And she's creating new fabrics by doing that. Essentially in that she's creating new patterns, not fabrics, patterns by doing that. And she's fascinated with kaleidoscopes, and that's why you get that. All of hers are kaleidoscope. Now, the other one that's really popular right now that you see a ton of people doing selective or fussy cutting is the Lucy Boston. And you can Google Lucy Boston and see all kinds of where they'll take the same image and fussy cut it and then use that as 8 pieces around a center. And they have gorgeous quilts.
La Pascaglia, I think, does a lot of focus on being very selective in the parts of the fabric you use to create that kind of repeat. Now, part of being selective with this is that you are like cutting holes in your fabric. You're not just like cutting a strip and chopping it into squares like you are. So there is more waste in terms of I mean, unless you go crazy and save all the other things and piece it together into, you know, some improv piecing, which is a good alternative for the weird shapes you end up left with.
You could do this. Yeah.
Which is why we hung this behind us, because in starting the foundation for the blocks, you started with 5-inch squares.
Correct.
But you could start with anything.
Exactly.
And you could fussy cut that center and have it work that way.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Definitely. But it is, if you're doing any kind of selective or fussy cutting, it's wasting fabric. I don't think there's any way around that.
Yeah.
Not to say that you're not going to use that fabric in something else, but you will keep it in a scrap or storage until that opportunity arises. It will not be in the quilt that you're creating.
Yeah, and I had done a little bit of selective cutting when I did the Who Loves You quilt, the clamshell with the owls on it.
Right.
Because I was using that panel of my ugly fabric, and I was taking the clamshell ruler and selectively saying, like, all right, I want this piece of the sky. I want this part of the water. And that it doesn't feel like fussy cutting, because I wasn't like, oh, give me the cute owl in the middle. But it was like being selective about the part of the fabric I wanted to use.
Well, this is the same thing. You're not doing this. You know, I think what everybody says fussy cutting, they're thinking of the novelty. Characters, Grinch, whatever. Yeah. And that definitely, and that will be like in the center of a block or something. But this is definitely just taking it to the next level where you're looking at pattern and how does it match up and all that kind of stuff. Because this creates that star point that is not in the fabric otherwise. And that's what those Lucy Boston and the
La Pascaglia.
I didn't want to try to pronounce it because we've already seen today's not been good for Lynn's pronunciation.
I'm surprised I got it correct.
I was good for you. I'm proud of you. But I do think that there's a place for fussy cutting, and I think when you're dealing with some kind of characters like this, we have a friend who
may or may not be in the room with us.
Who made a quilt about Marvel characters that
Spider-Man, Spider-Crotch.
Yes, I think Thor.
And others. Yeah, there was a lot.
Maybe some Captain America.
Which is a unintentional hilarity added.
We thought it was funny. So, yeah.
I don't want to judge.
I know.
Like, if you want to snuggle
exactly. But I do, you know, like this had some selective cutting in it. Like when I was choosing scraps, I was looking at the scraps and going, okay, if I cut it like this, I can get the whole hedgehog in it. So instead of cutting the hedgehog's head off, there's a hedgehog right here. See?
Oh, okay, there he is. Yeah.
And there's tigers.
I see more floral stuff.
There's tigers and hedgehogs and bunnies and raccoons.
Oh, it's like all the dead things in my yard. As mentioned on the stitch-in from last night.
I don't think you have a dead tiger in your yard.
No, not a tiger, but a deer, a frog, squirrel.
I do have a frog.
Probably a bunny. Half a bunny. Sorry.
There's a frog on here. It's just in a light blue. The frog is on here.
The frog, well, he's probably in that corner no one can see.
No, he's down there. There is a frog. There's a frog.
Oh, so we were just playing the I Spy game.
We totally were, which is great for kids.
It is.
And which is great for...
Or easily distracted quilters. Again,
Squirrel!
Not judging.
But I think that, you know, crazy quilts lend themselves to that too.
Yeah.
As well as It's a more I don't even know.
I don't even know where you're going. But I will say there are like entire shops on Etsy dedicated to people selling I Spy quilt charms or fussy cut things. Like, so if it's something you're interested in, but you don't want to have the investment of buying 50 fat quarters, you know, you can find some of these specialty shops that have like done the work for you and it is kind of a surprise because, yeah, you see the picture of the charms, and I've done that where I've like, I want to do an I Spy quilt when my kids were younger. Mm-hmm. And I bought like a charm assortment on there of things specific for that.
Of bugs?
No, I didn't.
Like the bug jar quilts?
Yeah, the bug jar quilts are cute, but I don't need that many bugs in my house. Again,
I've never made one because I don't
want to cuddle with bugs.
Bugs kind of creep me out.
Yeah.
I'm not a bug person.
No, I don't blame you. Entomology's not your jam.
Nope.
No.
Or reptiles. Not good with reptiles either.
She didn't like hearing about the snake in my basement.
Oh, no. Let's not talk about it.
It's not a euphemism.
Somebody posted a snake video. Somebody posted a snake video on What's Up Stitches. I was like, oh! All right, it was on Facebook the other day. It was like, why did I see 3 snake videos on Facebook? I don't like snakes. I don't want to see snakes. I don't need to learn about snakes. I'm okay with not knowing
You're the one
that
still
snakes
talking about
exist. Just saying. Okay, go ahead. Anyway, what I was going to say, though, this is a more mature I Spy quilt than, just making little blocks. I think it would be more...
Yes, I went to a different place.
This is advanced I Spy.
In the interpretation of mature, and it took me back to Spider Crunch. So that was my blank look there for a minute. Like,
well, maturity is variable in this table.
It's a more cosmopolitan application of fussy cutting. Continental? Is that a word? I don't know.
Continental is a word.
Well, I don't know if it's the appropriate word in this context.
Whether the context is right, I'm not sure. I don't know. So that's all I have to say about Selective. I think I gave you some tips, showed you some examples. I'm feeling good about it.
It's good. So, are you fussy about pushing all the buttons on your sewing machine?
Yes, I am.
Does it drive you crazy? Let us know. Leave a comment on our blog or on the YouTube episode. And that's all we have for this episode. Today's show is made possible by QT Fabrics. Learn more about their fun fabrics at qtfabrics.com. And who do we want to thank this time, Lynn?
We want to thank 77 Peaches, Big Think Productions for helping produce The Stitch. And if you've enjoyed the show, please like, share, and subscribe.
The next virtual stitch-in is Friday, July 13th. We have confirmed there will be cake. It's at 7 p.m. U.S. Eastern. You know why there's cake? It's going to be my birthday. It's going to be broadcast on our YouTube channel. And our next book club episode is June 27th. My podcast, Hip to Be a Square, is going to be out Fridays or Saturdays sometime.
When she pushes a button.
Pretty much. Well, I have to record it first. I can push the button now. Ain't nothing going out.
All those details and more can be found on our website, thestitchtvshow.com. Tune in next time for more quilting chat with friends.